Hello and welcome to the Quantum Bridge. From myself, Casper. I'm sorry that I'm wearing a coat on a podcast, but I'm doing this from a different location than usual, and it's pretty cold, and I'm being a bit of a wimp. So bear with me, as usual. Anyway, very pleased that we have a guest with us today, and since the guest came via Gary, I'm going to pass across to Gary to do the intros.
Thank you very much, Casper. And I'm in this normal location and freezing in a t-shirt, but it's, sometimes needs must. It's whatever.
The show must go on. Yeah, you're far better than me. Yeah.
It is cold now. Yes, so as Casper mentioned, I've met this guest via X, as a lot of our guests come from there. So if you're on there, you may know her as the Travelling Sign. But today, we'd like to welcome Valerie to the show. Welcome, Valerie.
Hi.
Hi, Valerie.
Hi.
Brilliant. So before we get more into the sign, actually, I will say what it is, because I wrote it down here. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it is solidarity and tyranny ends when we say no. I was going to set the tone for the show. So you may know where this is going. But before we get more into that, maybe you give us a little bit about your background, yourself. Obviously, you are referred to as the Travelling Sign, so you're moving around a lot. We know you're in Europe at the moment, but where would you call home?
Nowhere.
Nowhere.
From Singapore, but even when I was a kid, I never really considered Singapore home. I felt like an alien there. I don't feel comfortable in Singapore. And so I spent a lot of my life being outside of Singapore. But I was stuck in Singapore when lockdown started because I was back there. And then, of course, I left Singapore November 2021. So almost 2 years now, because I didn't take the vaccine and I wasn't allowed to work and banned from everywhere. So I thought, oh, Europe's pretty open at that time. So I decided to travel. So I came to Europe in end of November 2021, and I've just been traveling since then.
Wow. So it was pretty strict where you was then. I mean,
yeah, it was strict. We had 2 years of indoor and outdoor mask mandates. Even outside, if you're alone at the beach, masked enforcers, those enforcers will come around and tell you to put on your mask. Didn't make sense, but yeah. And I was banned from most places. I was teaching yoga at the time. I'm a writer and yoga teacher, but I was teaching yoga at the time, and I was no longer allowed into studios. So I wasn't allowed to teach. So, yeah.
Yeah, pretty tragic, really, as a lot of people have experienced. But before that, how long have you been doing the yoga? And is that a lifelong sort of thing?
Not long. I never even thought about being a yoga teacher. It just so happened that I met my yoga teacher when I was back in Singapore before lockdown. And I really liked him and his style of teaching. And then lockdown happened, and he taught online every single day. And I joined every single day. And then eventually he asked me if I wanted to teach. He gave me the opportunity to start teaching when studios reopened, and that was what I did.
So were you natural, Valerie? Did it come to you very easily? Are you naturally flexible and so on then?
I think so. I grew up very active, so I'm relatively flexible and strong, and I wasn't really into yoga in the first place initially, because to me it all seemed very maybe westernized and so commercialized, and it was really like for rich people, kind of, because people pay a lot to go to the fancy studios and dress in expensive clothes and all that, and I wasn't into that. But I was into aerial yoga, which was, you got to fly around in a hammock, and that was really fun. And then I did pole fitness in Singapore. And my teacher's yoga studio was just a few doors down from the pole studio. And that's why I got curious, because I read a description of him. He's from India, but he's lived in Singapore many years, and he's really interesting. He's very unconventional, and he comes up with his own exercises to help people heal from injury. And he's all about, don't just do yoga, do all sorts of things. Just go out, enjoy yourself, move, try everything. And I liked his sense of humor and his open approach. So that's why I started doing it regularly with him.
I think it's interesting what you say about yoga and the sort of concept that many of us have about yoga now, that it did, as it seeped into the West, it seemed to be, I mean, certainly coming from a society full of the class system in the UK, it did feel very much that this was a sort of middle class thing to do. And, it was nice and gentle, and it was a bit like, maybe tea mornings. Nothing wrong with those, Gary, of course.
No,
but,
I'm more tea afternoon sort of guy, yeah.
Yeah, tea afternoons, yeah. More about that thing of sort of, it was the next thing, and it, there was a semblance maybe of spirituality or what yoga really is around union with the cosmos and whatever thrown into it, but really, actually, it was more about sort of a gentle form of exercise that was good for you, and became something more of a sort of social thing to do, and maybe even a sort of status thing to do on some level. I'm not knocking anybody who's doing yoga. It's obviously they're like Tai Chi and all of these things. These are great and wonderful things to do. But I just take your point. And the reason that I'm making this sort of diversion for a second, I'd like your thoughts on this, is because I do know that there are many people, I would guess mainly from the East, who are a bit like, well, yeah, they're not really doing yoga necessarily in the West. What they're actually doing is they're sort of stretching and having a nice time and whatever, but then their primary focus isn't the spiritual aspect. I just wonder how you feel about that and how important that spiritual aspect is or isn't for you, Valerie.
I think initially for me, it was from what I learned from my teacher. I was fascinated by how he was able to just use yoga to help people heal physically. But also through yoga, I understood, like, I know even before I did yoga, people talked about how yoga is a mind-body connection. And I was not very certain what it was until I did some yoga moves and I've experienced it for myself, a moment when it clicked, where I was feeling exactly what my body was doing, and I knew kind of intuitively what I needed to do to not fall or not injure myself. And that's when I understood the mind-body connection, and I feel that that is very important. So whether you just want to do physical moves in yoga or more, I think the mind-body connection is very important, because we can't go about life not realizing what's going on in our bodies and not being more mindful of how we are moving. Because for one, that protects us and keeps us healthy. And also, if you are more aware of how you are feeling in everything that you do, I think I don't know how to describe it. I don't know, but you just feel that you are not doing things mindlessly, like, oh, I'm just moving from this point to this point or stretching this to that. I understand. For me, it's very important to have meaning in everything that I do. And so I like that I understand what I'm doing, what I'm going to achieve, and how I can help people with that by experiencing it in my own body and understanding that. And of course, with that, I guess it naturally leads to more curiosity about spirituality and building awareness. Yeah.
Interesting. Gary, you might want to touch on the sort of things that drew you to Valerie on X, really.
Yeah, I think it was it was that interesting combination. Obviously, a lot of people are feeling they want to speak out against what's been happening, certainly throughout the last few years. And I thought Valerie had that real interesting twist on it. She was combining a message with these pictures of her yoga poses and the sign. Might be a good time to. Do you have the sign with you? There it is, the famous, famous sign itself. Now, maybe one day, maybe, you know, when we get out of the other side of this mess, maybe you should sign it and sell it or something, auction it. Who knows? Yeah, there you go. So keep it safe. Yes. So it was that real sort of, yeah. You got it in plastic. Yeah. So yeah, I found that sort of really interesting. There's some inspiring messages, and it's this thing that I've noticed. Everyone is trying to do their little bit, like Casper and I are here, of helping support each other through this time. You know, we might not have the biggest voice or platform, but this is what it's about. It's each one of us having our little role, and it's interesting to watch how we all fulfill that. And I look at other people and stuff. So, when did you actually start? Was it sort of 2020 started posting, or was it later than that?
No. Oh, so I was traveling in Europe by then. So I guess end of 2021 or early 2022. I was in Zurich staying with friends, and then I found out that there were protests in Bern, in Zurich, and I knew I had to join them because in Singapore, protesting is banned. We've even had people before COVID holding up a sign stating their opinion, posting it on social media, and I believe there's 1 or 2 people who were jailed because of that.
Wow.
So it's really very little freedom of speech in Singapore. That's one of the reasons I got out also, because it's just frustrating to not even be able to meet with people and you know, find like-minded people to talk about this. So I joined protests and I wrote this sign. I carried it around in the protest, and then I couldn't bring myself to throw it away when I left Switzerland. And then one day I was just doing some yoga poses on the beach, and I thought, oh, why don't I just put my sign in the picture? And it turned out very well, and I sent it to some friends. And then one of my friends said I should start a Twitter account. I didn't have any social media then. So I started Twitter last year, April. And I started posting this with my messages. And because I was previously a writer and I enjoy writing. So I thought, you know, I'll combine my yoga with a little bit of writing and expressing myself. And yeah, so that's how it started. And I was banned for a few months. I was banned from August to this year, early this year.
Wow.
I was suspended for no reason in August. And I wrote in to ask, why am I suspended? Why wasn't I given a reason? Can you tell me why? And then the message I got back was, you're banned. Yeah. So after Elon Musk took over, I wrote in and I said I was banned for no reason. And then I was reinstated.
I've tried that, but my old account is still banned. So never mind.
Take that as a badge of honor, my friend.
Yeah, that's it was spreading too much positivity. I don't know. Yeah. So it's been a very interesting journey for you then, in that sense. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I do like the pictures. They're very glamorous. They're sort of always nice sunshine. So maybe you haven't visited the UK. I don't know. On a grey, rainy beach somewhere. Have you been here? You passed through this way?
I have been to the UK as a teenager on a school trip. And I remember there was a lot of rain, even in summer.
Oh, you managed to find the summer.
Yeah. It's brilliant. So, I mean, this is the original sign. There's no cheating here, no?
Yeah.
It's the same one you started with.
I thickened the letters recently because many people wrote to me telling me they can't read the sign, they can't see the words. So I bolded them. So now it's a little bit better. But
you could have just written on the sign, "You need an optician."
Yeah, that's it. It's deceiving sometimes because it looks quite big in the pictures because it's at the foreground.
Yes,
it's
yes.
smaller than I was expecting, that sort of thing. So it's
Yeah.
So Valerie's bigger than you expected, Karen, I take it.
Sorry?
no, not Valerie.
Must be
The
bigger.
sign. The sign.
You're bigger than he expected, Valerie,
No.
because you're always in the background. He thought you were only this big.
Yeah, that's it. Like a little thing, toy that you can pose. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Tiny dancer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Valerie, can you tell us a little bit more about, I'm interested, a couple of things. Firstly, at the moment you're in Eastern Europe. Are you happy to say whereabouts you are?
Croatia.
So you're in Croatia at the moment. And in terms of I take it, before I jump into a couple of other questions, I take it Croatia feels like quite an open society for you. Is that why you're there at the moment?
Yes. So I went to a few different countries, and in Croatia, I actually met the most people who, well, kind of like-minded. Like they were not happy with the measures, and they spoke up or they resisted in their own way. So many of them I met, many who felt the same way, whether they were vaccinated or not, they felt the same way. And people here have been really warm and welcoming.
Right.
So I felt freer here.
And how are you getting on with the language and in terms of work as well, of actually making money? How have those two things been for you?
I tried to learn Croatian, but the grammar is so complicated. Even the locals tell me, they get it wrong all the time. So and I stopped for a while, and I know just like really very basic stuff, but I guess I just need to have some discipline to pick it up again.
Can you get by over there in English? Is English enough? Is English enough?
That speaks really good English.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
we can all be a little bit lazy over there, can we really?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm thankful that I met many people who speak completely fluent English. Yeah.
Interesting. The only other question I wanted to mention for people who might be interested about sort of your history and growing up, but around particularly that aspect of your writing. So before you got into the yoga thing, how were you making a living? Were you actually writing for fun and also maybe selling some of your work or whatever, or was that a job? Or so what were you doing prior to managing to escape to Croatia?
I was doing writing. I wrote for a magazine some time ago in Singapore, and then I TV, and then I went away to New Zealand for a working holiday, and then I spent a few years in Australia volunteering with koalas. And at that time, contacts for freelance writing with an animation company. So I did freelance writing for them while volunteering at the koala hospital in Australia. And then at some point I went back to Singapore because I was only on the tourist visa, so I had to go in and out. So I went back to Singapore, and then the border shut.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Right. And in terms of keeping yourself afloat financially now, is that requiring you to sort of teach yoga online? What are you doing to keep yourself fed and clothed and with a roof over your head at the moment?
I've just been living off my savings. And wherever I go, I tell people, I made some name cards and I pass them around to people. I'm really bad at self-promotion. I've even taught people yoga for free. I don't know how to,
I think that's really an interesting point, actually, that you're making, because I think a lot of us have struggled. I mean, my background is really sort of sales and marketing. So I'm used to selling concepts, ideas, products, services to people. And I'd like to think pretty good at that. But when it comes to this area of doing things that actually mean something to you on a heart and soul level, I've always found it very, very difficult to sell or market anything that I'm close to. So I think it's really interesting and not surprising, actually, that you say that.
Mm.
Yeah, it feels wrong.
Yeah,
To
well,
me.
precisely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think me and Casper discussed this a lot, that we feel we're in this transitionary period where we're not quite there yet, where we can support ourselves in a different way. We're still sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out with this old monetary type system, the old sort of fiat and the banking and regular jobs, and it's hard to. We feel we're moving away from that energetically, but it's hard to become sufficient in that way. You know, we can do certain things and we can save differently. We can grow some shop differently or grow our own produce, but it's still quite difficult at the moment because of that financial aspect. I would think a lot of people find it difficult.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have a plan going forward, Valerie, as to either what you are going to be doing or would like to be doing?
No.
Okay.
I just I've just really enjoyed the traveling and
Yeah.
meeting people. I'm quite an introvert and I'm very shy. So it's not easy for me to, just socialize and meet people. But I've had to, push myself to step out of my comfort zone and get to know people. And I am just very touched by the kindness of people everywhere I've gone. Every single country I've traveled to, I have met very, very kind people who have been very helpful and very warm, just treating me like a friend or a family member. And I think that's touched me a lot over the past 2 years.
Yeah. It's another thing we try to show, just like getting guests like yourself on, that whilst the struggle, it is worldwide, because a lot of people can become insular and think it was just my country, or they feel very alone. But we try and show that everyone is affected by this around the world. But we aren't alone. There are other kind-hearted souls trying to do their best, and like we said at the start, support each other and all do our own little piece to get us through this sort of dark period.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you see? Are you optimistic of where we're going? How do you feel? Because where you're meeting people and stuff, it's quite nice.
I think I'm pretty optimistic. I don't believe that we will all fall apart and we will, be destroyed or anything like that. I just think I do feel very, very strongly, though, that every single one of us is responsible for not just our own lives, but what we do with people around us, to whether we want to work at becoming a better person, in trying to and try to change the world just a little bit. I read a lot, and I've read in the past few years a lot about meditation and spirituality, and how everyone is connected, and how our energy affects other people, affects the world around us. And so I feel very strongly that we all have to do something, improve ourselves, and then with that we try to change the world. And I believe we can do that, but we just need more people to come to that realization, instead of being materialistic and superficial and just chasing money and status and fame. We work on ourselves and just see what we can become. So in that sense, I'm quite hopeful, because I have met many people who yeah, who who treat people well, who understand that we are all connected in one way or another, and they don't live in a terribly self-centered way. So I think that's hopeful, but I didn't have that hope in Singapore, because to me, Singapore is just really materialistic, and a lot of people, they just don't care for humanity. And so to me, I felt very claustrophobic in Singapore, and a little bit down. So I had to get out of there.
Well, we're guided to do all sorts of things, and it's just acting on that guidance. You know, you've got that nudge to move, and you did. So it's quite nice that you're living in that now moment. You're not sure what tomorrow is bringing or where you're going, and it is what we're all trying to get to, that little point where it's just living in the now. So you're doing well.
Thank you.
So again, time is against us. Anything else, Casper, before we close out the show?
No, all I would say is I'm sure there's plenty more we could cover with Valerie. I've really enjoyed this, and it's lovely to have. I mean, this is why we did the channel in the first place, to get people who would speak from their heart, particularly keen to get people who do feel that they're quote unquote introverted or shy or whatever, because their voice is, I actually feel at the moment, more important than those of us who find it easy to speak to people, and a bit more like myself, where I can be quite outgoing and so on, and don't have to fight that internal battle before I have that engagement with other people. So I think it's lovely. I think Valerie seems like a lovely, wonderful soul who definitely should have done exactly what she did, which is to get out from an environment that just for her wasn't right. And I love the fact you took action, Valerie, and I hope to see you again. But I thought that was a very heartfelt story about your life and what you've done. So I just want to say thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for having me on. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to chat with like-minded people, because sometimes I can feel so alone.
Yeah. We all can, but it's a great point to remember that we're not. And you know, people can go onto the channel and hear tons and tons of conversations now that we've had with people who have felt the same. So there's no need any longer to feel that you're going through all this in isolation, or that you have to achieve everything on your own. It will be as much as we're given as much as we can handle, and we will do as much as we can, and that's all we can ask of ourselves. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So thank you once again, Valerie.
Thank you.
Coming along. And what we'll do is, as per usual, your sort of information will be in the description under the video. We'll put your X account, and I recommend people check that out. Post regularly, really sort of inspiring, uplifting posts for all of us. So thank you for all the work you do.
Yeah, thank you.
Look after yourself and the sign. So.
Yeah. That's more important.
Great. Thank you very much. Take care.
See you. Take care.
Bye-bye. Take care.